Hey, gang, it's time for another episode of Ranching Reboot, the podcast that reboots your thinking about farming, ranching, food systems, and the people that operate them. My guest this week is someone I'm connected to outside of our jobs. But first, a few words about this season's podcast sponsor, Land Trust, the Recreation Access Network. This season is sponsored by Land Trust. Feeling the squeeze on ranch profitability or got some underutilized land just sitting there? Land Trust can be your partner on unlocking new revenue streams and getting the most out of your ranch. They're experts in connecting ranchers with a variety of income boosting opportunities. Whether you've got prime hunting grounds that could be leased out to responsible hunters, scenic fields perfect for agritourism events like farm tours and harvest festivals, or even space for glamping and other unique on farm experiences, Land Trust can help you assess your options, find the right fit for your ranch, and get you set up for success. Don't let valuable land sit idle. Turn it into a source of income and connect with the public's growing interest in agriculture. Visit www.landtrust.com/reboot today, or just click the link in the show notes to help you get started and explore how Land Trust can help your ranch thrive. Support for this episode is also provided by Wild Ass Soap Company, who I'm thinking about right now because I've been outside most of the day sweating, and I don't feel or smell funky because I use Wild Ass Soap deodorant. You already know it's made from some of the best natural stuff in the world, and right now is a great time to stock up for summer. I'm about to head on over to wildasssoaps.com/reboot and make another order. You should too. That's wildasssoaps.com/reboot, or just click the link in the show notes. All right, my guest today cruised over from his place. I think he might have needed a little bit of break from his feral farm children. So we sat on my front porch and talked about all things farming, ranching, and especially no-till on the plains. The last time Aaron Sawyers was on the show, we set up the mobile studio in his dining room, and this time he's back for a little one-on-one. So here we go. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's good. My boots are wet. Drizzling.
Yeah,
what
is this stuff?
It's what April was supposed to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't plan to be on the front porch today. I kind of wanted to be out in the yard with some trees,
right.
But at least we've got a pretty green background.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, so you've had a baby since we last spoke.
We did. We had a little boy there on April 7th. Andrew.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So getting adjusted to life with 3 kids and working from home and trying to get summer stuff planned. So always something to do.
Always something exciting around the
the
Sawyers farmstead.
Oh yeah, always.
Well, so what are we talking about today?
Well, I thought we'd do kind of a wrap up of No Till's Winter Conference.
Okay.
Kind of, we were talking just a little bit ago. You made a comment that usually No Till Conference was kind of for farmers.
Yes.
We're trying to change that stigma a little bit about it's for everybody, whether you're a rancher, farmer, backyard gardener, high tunnel on a quarter of an acre, whatever.
Because at the end of the day, it all really comes back to soil health.
Yeah, we're trying to equip people to grow their own food, regardless of the scale or what you're doing, where you're at, your context, really trying to meet people where they're at, and everybody's at a different place. So I've been on full time now for 2 years. May 1st was 2 years. So trying to push the envelope a little bit, but still keep that reputation that we are providing good information. Maybe not like, I used to work for Extension, the researched base, but people that are doing it for a living. That's what people want to see. They don't want to hear a professor or PhD tell them, you have to do this.
Right. And that kind of makes me think of some other conversations that I've had with other folks, and you'll kind of appreciate this too, because you organize a lot of events. And the conversation was like kind of specifically, why is High Plains No-Till out in Burlington such a great conference, and why do people make such great connections there? And I feel like bottom line out in Lakin is kind of becoming very, very similar in terms that that people are very open and very vulnerable, and it's a really great conference for producers to go to ask the silly questions they're afraid to ask. And maybe we did have this conversation, a part of it, but the reason I think that is the farther west you go from here, the more it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not great here. Down in Stillwater last year when I was there for that Noble Regenerative Ranching course, they said here in Stillwater on a research station for the last 50 years or whatever, since we've been keeping records, 5 out of 10 years we're in drought. And I think about the folks in Lakin, Burlington, on the Colorado-Kansas state line that are out there trying to farm on 12 inches of rain. It sucks every year. And it sucks for everybody every year, and it's a struggle. And I think when they find something that works, that's low cost and low input, low effort, that works, they really want to share it with everybody because they see all their neighbors struggle.
Right. We're in it together. I mean, everybody needs to win sometime, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like you're talking about the degrees of sucking as you go west. Moisture can make things seem easier, but when you go further east into, to Iowa, there was someone posted they had 13 inches of rain overnight. When we got that system that came through about 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I couldn't imagine dealing with that in one event, especially there where it's usually miles and miles of plowed cornfield.
I'd be sandbagging my basement if they got 13 inches of rain upriver here. I guarantee.
Because we're close to that when you get 5.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine. And in the drought of 11, 12, 13, 14, we had 11 inches to 13 inches was kind of our average annual precip during that time. So it's just, we were talking about Gale a little bit a minute ago, talking to Gale Fuller when he was dealing with the flooding of the river there at his old place before he sold it and moved. If he's like, dry's not all bad when you're dealing with blood. I mean, but you got to have something.
I was listening to you talk, and I think that, we tell ourselves we live in an area that gets 20 to 22 inches of rainfall. And I think we really need to adjust that expectation. If we said that we got 15 inches of rain, and that was what we would call kind of our baseline. If we just say our new normal of rain, we're just going to take 25% off what we think we get, and this is our new normal, and budget for that. And anything you get past that is going to be a blessing or possibly ill-timed where you can't capture it and make use of it. We can get a 7-inch rain in 30 minutes. It doesn't matter how good your soil health is. There's a lot of that's going down the creek.
Or like this year, we had a really good November, December, January for our area.
Yep.
The wheat crop looked awesome. January, we had one system come through. February and March, total at my house was a little over 6/10.
January, February, March are usually really dry.
But to see how wet we were and full profile to come out in February and March, and then in April, we're already depleted in the top 4 to 6 inches.
Yeah.
That your comment about Noble saying that Stillwater 5 out of 10 years they're in drought. Droughts seem to happen faster. The little flash droughts, like we don't have that cushion, our soils aren't as resilient. So it seems like we wick out the top faster and profile goes down quicker. This just a general observation. It's not a scientific study.
I agree with that. And that tags into a discussion that was on last week's podcast that came out, I don't know, like 12 hours ago. You probably haven't listened to it. That's fine. But we were discussing, I discussed this on week before episode with Dale Strickler about when we've diverted 15 million acre feet of water out of the Colorado River to go to the Imperial Valley to grow strawberries and artichokes. Like, how much does that have any effect on our climate here? It has to. Like there has to be some sort of climate effect from that we're just completely ignoring. Should that be part of the climate change conversation? Probably. But then again, neither you or I have a dog in the Colorado River water fight, and we should both be glad for it.
Right. Even though you wonder as it affects the Ogallala, that aquifer, that whole area.
Yeah.
You've seen not too long ago, City of Hayes purchased water rights on a ranch a couple hours.
Yeah, like it wasn't a couple hours, but it was
Or an
it was
hour.
2 rivers south, I think.
So I was like, you start looking at one of the places we're going to have fights over is water, and whose water it is and how far we can pump it where we want it, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully through soil health practices of all kinds, we can just get it to where it should be and get it in the ground versus running off and causing these catastrophic floods and rain events that we see.
Yeah.
I don't have the news anymore, but when you see the news, it's all it is anymore.
I don't.
Yeah, it's like we haven't had TV since 2020. So I don't see the news unless the news finds me, then I see it.
I mean, the news that finds me is usually when I scroll my Google feed
Right.
or stuff that I want to know
Right.
about that I go look for, because mainstream media, I mean, besides zero credibility and zero information, it's just
Right.
don't really need that kind of negativity in my life.
Right.
I guess the other side of that is like looking at the weather. Oh, there's a chance for rain next week. Like, come on, we're in D3. It's just, don't get too excited about forecast until it does start raining.
Mm-hmm.
You said something. Moisture makes it seem easier. And there's a lot of truth to that in agriculture. Where it's humid, rains regularly, things are easier. Where you've got good growing weather and you can pump basically unlimited amounts of water on your crop, and you don't have to worry about mold or anything like that because you're in an arid environment. Oh, hey, that's great. And, like I said, I don't have a dog in this fight either about irrigation or Ogallala Aquifer, but it seems awful silly to continue using a dwindling resource.
I know I like to be ahead of the change that we know is coming. We know what we do is not, I don't like sustainable, but it's gonna have to change in probably your and I's lifetime.
Yeah.
Because in our lifetime, they've already lost some of their water rights and their ability to pump in the further northwest because they've run dry. And we got to figure out how to do better, all of us, with what we have, which seems like less. So we got to, don't want to get into the weeds, but, doing more with less and feeding the people around us, that area versus the feeding the world mentality.
Right. And I mean, and everybody knows how I feel about the whole feed the world mentality.
That's what I don't want to get in the weeds.
It's easy to talk about, okay, what are ways to reduce the water usage? Yeah, we all need to be efficient. And you'll have the same guys stand up in those meetings and say that stuff. But they'll go home and not make changes because if they use less water,
they can pump less.
But then maybe if they're pumping less, the water board will say, well, if you're pumping less, you don't need this much. So we're going to take this much of your allocation or this much of your water right and give it to this big city that you hate.
Right.
So it's kind of a catch-22. There's almost anybody that uses irrigation water will agree that it needs to be more efficient and we need to be more responsible with the water usage, but getting somebody to actually pull the trigger to make a reduction long-term, it seems to be very difficult.
They don't want to do that until it stops. Most people's theory is let's pump it till it's dry and we'll figure out something else. I don't want to be that person. I don't have any irrigation other than I have one neighbor that his in-gun water is part of my pasture. So I have some bonus irrigation, but I don't have any irrigation. Or as, Jake Miller calls irritation wells, right?
Yeah. 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 It's just strange to me. And like I said, it's being part of the industry. And, I know we need to support others in the industry, but at the same time, we can't just hide behind a dogmatic blanket and defend indefensible practices.
Right.
I mean, what would be an example of an indefensible practice? prophylactic antibiotics in a feedlot or a confined animal feeding operation. That would be an example of something that's kind of almost indefensible.
Yeah, it gets hard. And again, I think the incentives are there for people to start changing to, I won't say the right practices, because we really don't know what we've done till we're down the road, 20, 30 years, if we were the right, or if we use the right thing. There's incentives through programs for people to start changing now towards a different direction that we hope's more sustainable, more regenerative, that we use less fossil fuels, we use less irrigation water, we use less fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, all this, mainly because of the cost of using them, right? Net farm income has been in the tank for a long time, right?
Right.
The only way to make more money is to spend less, usually.
It's,
I mean,
I can't control how much I make. I can only control how much I spend.
right.
Working more doesn't necessarily net more money. And I think it's sad that, net farm profitability keeps going down, or, average farm profitability keeps going down. The farm bill keeps getting bigger every year. They keep putting in, every program keeps getting more money. What do they cut? They cut conservation programs. They cut tree killing programs. They cut programs to give money for grazing groups. And where do they stuff all that back into? Back into the crop insurance subsidy system. And there's just so many things that indirectly are destroying the soil, and very few incentives to do it. We have to have a carrot and stick approach. And the cost pain. People have to feel the cost pain, the increased cost pain, the input cost pain, whatever. I'll come up with a better term someday. But when you're in the hammock of the safety net, which is honestly, I feel, where most producers are,
Right.
you have to have some pain to get out of that.
And some of them, how many guys do you know operate without an operating loan? Pretty few.
I mean, me,
I don't have one.
you, okay? I mean,
less than 10%.
Yeah.
Probably less than 1%.
yeah.
So-
I bet between you and I, if we sat here for 30 minutes, we couldn't come up with 3 more people.
I know one other one in our county, but it's the safety net there of how do we also get bankers on board of these practices, knowing that their risk is directly tied to the insurance and some of the things that protect them. So it's all about covering your butt, right? Is what
Right.
it's about. So how do we get it to where you don't always have to cover your butt, so you can take a few risks within your context? And that's what I like about No Till Now that I work for. Most people, when we go to like conference or a field day, they're excited about something. You mentioned earlier, it seems like when you go like Burlington, Joni has an awesome conference out there.
Mhm.
Just a few weeks after ours. I try to go every year. People at those conferences are excited to share.
Yeah.
Right? Where you and I are here in traditional, conventional ag country, if someone's making money doing something, they are very secretive about it, right?
Yep.
Because I guess it's a stigma or something that someone's going to take their knowledge and put them out of business, or it's just that old traditional, our business is private, we don't share. I don't know.
There's sure some cultural things, cultural influences. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, from what I understand, pretty similar groups of people settled, from here all the way to the Front Range.
Right.
Pretty similar group of people, pretty similar time frame that everything developed out here.
So, conference this year.
Yes.
You brought your lovely bride,
Yes.
which happens to be my cousin, so it's nice to see her there.
Little family ties
Right.
going on.
What'd you guys think?
Um,
Or who are your your top speakers, that's maybe easier.
Oh man, you'd throw that one at me.
I brought my book.
I'll have to go back and look, and maybe we take a pee break. I'll go back through and look at those. We can circle back to that question later. Because honestly, there's just
there was a bunch.
Well, there was a bunch there, and we had Soil Health U before that.
Yep.
And then, like right after that, I went to Burlington. There's been
January's busy.
Yeah, January's busy. Nick Voss, always loved listening to Nick Voss. Steve Tucker, I thought was fantastic. I really enjoyed getting to know him. And of course, Lance Gunderson, he's always extremely entertaining.
Right.
Kelly and Deanna Lazinski, had them on the podcast. I met them up there at
Good.
Hotel. But here's my complaint. And it's the venue. And it mostly has to do with having the vendors out in the halls scattered around.
Mm-hmm.
If they had another room available for you that you could stuff all the vendors in for, a vendor hall, trade show floor,
Right.
I think that would be much better. And then having conversation spaces in the halls.
Right.
I think that would be an improvement, but then again, that's a limitation or anything.
Yeah, it's a limitation of the venue. And I know in the last, I've been here for 2 years. So the last 18 months, we've talked about moving conference around.
Where do you have a conference for 500 people?
Well, there's some places in like Kearney, Nebraska that have reached out to me.
Okay.
There's a nice center there that I'm going to go tour sometime later this summer. We've also talked, what was the other cities on there? Oklahoma City, Dallas. There's venues. It's just finding one. But if you move too far south or too far north, you alienate so many hours the opposite direction. Who's going to travel 3 hours further north if you're in Kearney versus,
I think there's a benefit to keeping it in Wichita because tradition, I don't know how many guys that you have come back every year or, every other year, or every third year. I guess I have a different perspective on conferences because I go and I keep going, and I've been going for a lot of years. And, I get some people think it's kind of weird when they know me from like here and they go to a conference with me and I'm hugging everybody and shaking hands and slapping babies and, doing all the stuff. Cause it's like, that's my tribe. And that's a lot of times that's where I get energy from. And yeah, some of us have known each other for 10, 12, 15 years and we've been doing these things for 15 freaking years and we've known each other. So that's kind of neat. That's kind of one part of it that I really like. So my dad and I were talking about this kind of in conjunction with some KGLC thing. And you probably know what I'm talking about, but like where is there to have a meeting? I mean, the places we need to have the meetings where the people are, there's no place to have meetings. I mean, Garden City, we might be able to find somewhere to have a 500 person meeting in Garden City. 150, 200 person meetings, those are easy. But when you start talking about 500.
Right. And I think they told us 480 something is our max occupancy in Wichita at the Marriott, per the fire marshal code. We were at 380 something this year with vendors and everybody.
Okay.
It's full.
Yeah.
I mean, you have room in the ballroom when everybody's in there, but when you get out in the halls, and I'm learning
where everybody wants to talk.
Right. And I'm learning on the sponsors, because again, said you come in for your first couple of years, you don't really change much. We kind of go with what they had been doing. You maybe tweak a few little things of this year. I think we were oversold a few spaces for sure there.
Yeah, you wouldn't even let me have one.
To give people more room to interact. And, we cannot do this without our sponsors. So I don't want our sponsors to feel like we're just trying to cash in. So it's business plus, trying to be a good person to get along. Like it's a growth thing and listening.
I don't want to talk about some of the numbers to put on a conference like this, but it is a phenomenal amount of money that you got to put up ahead of time. Yeah, sponsors will kick in some, but sometimes those sponsors don't pay till 30 after. And you got to hope that,
that they pay.
Yeah. I mean, the people that promote these conferences and organizations that promote these conferences, they put up quite a bit. I mean, it's.
When you figure $25 to $30 a plate for motel food.
Yeah.
And the Marriott staff does a really good job for us. For motel food, it's good.
If we were somewhere like Century 2, you'd have to pay a caterer.
Right, and that's one thing we're working on is I would really like, I get they make their money when they sell their food and that kind of stuff, but really like if they'd let me control a protein option or two during the week. So it's something I'm still going to continue to work on, that I just think it'd resonate better with the crowd if, hey, so-and-so here in the crowd supplied your guys' beef today. They grow it like this. Like, again, the networking, the connection, the building, the big family, that will help tell the story.
They do that at two big conferences that I know of that I go to. Regenerate, which is put on by the Quivira Coalition. It's usually in the fall. They always locally source everything, and they make a big deal about telling you what it is. And then, well, you put out like, okay, here are places to go in town to eat. When they put that list out, all the stuff that uses local ingredients, and it's like regenerative, they're at the top of the list. And if you're a chain restaurant, you don't make their list at all. And I think that's pretty cool. Grass-fed exchange, they only do that like every other year. I think we should have one this year. I should know that, and I don't. The two times that I've been, they've done a phenomenal job with the food and having locally sourced and regenerative ingredients.
They said when they had it downtown at the Hyatt that Century 1, they had something where someone provided the beef for one of the meals. Years ago.
I remember that.
I do know there's capabilities to do that. And it comes down to some of the other chances to do that are, it's a business decision. You can have the conference there and you can eat food elsewhere, right? If you have an event, social, something at some other place, there's some things we're working on that are just right now being talked out. Nothing, I mean, we're still in the infancy stages of planning 25.
Well, going back to your idea of like moving, like maybe going Kearney, Oklahoma City, maybe somewhere in Colorado, like Pueblo, or...
We haven't talked about going west. I know Green Cover has one of their conferences there in Arizona, and it's been good.
I
been out there.
I feel like if No-Till really wanted to expand and make more of an impact, I think you guys should go west. It sucks. The farther you go west, the more it sucks till you hit the Front Range.
We had a field day at Logan's, Fribano's place last year in Imperial. And the comments were, nice to see programming in a drought area.
And that's what I'm saying.
Like, we have another grazing conference in Broken Bow this year, which is still...
That's Broken Bow, Nebraska, not Broken Bow, Oklahoma.
Yes, Broken Bow, Nebraska.
Which I've never been to Broken Bow, Nebraska, but Broken Bow, Oklahoma is...
Registration is open. It's kind of slow right now, so hopefully we get...
Well, we're here. Talk about it.
June 13th.
Okay.
Logan's going to be there. He's going to talk about that. Let me get all my people. Kevin Sedevic. Do you know who Kevin is?
I don't.
He's North Dakota State rain specialist.
Okay.
And he runs a research center up there east of Bismarck.
Okay.
And south a little. I don't think we're going to get a tour of that on the bus tour this time, but we talked about, he does several, just talking to him on the phone on that, he does several different studies.
No, the bus tour is separate from what you're talking about.
Bus tour is separate.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk about bus tour too.
Yep. He, Candy Thomas. She listened to Kevin give a talk called The Role of Forbs in Native Rangeland.
Okay.
And where you and I are at, we have guys that spray pastures to get rid of weeds. Silly. But he talks about how they provide minerals and different things to the cows. Plus, that's how we get some of the minerals and things into the grass that the cows lack. So he has a really nice talk about why they're beneficial. and he has some information, like years of information of measuring nutrient content in them before fire, after fire. He does, I think he said they have 300 mama cows that they cab early because they have to have everything hauled out to their studies by May 1, the
Okay.
pairs. And they're doing some radio collars, some poly wire, some set stocking. I mean, he's doing 300 cows is a good number of cows for university research. So I haven't met him in person. I'm really excited. When Candy tells me they're good, they're good.
I would generally trust her judgment.
Right. So he'll be there. Jeff Nichols is an NRCS guy there right around Broken Bow. He's going to talk about, it's good to collaborate, right?
Yeah.
So NRCS has some really good stuff that people don't always know about because sometimes they're like, nope, I'm not doing it. NRCS. Well, it's nice
Government, get away from it.
right. It's nice to include them in the program. And then Matt McGinn has a branch up there that I haven't met, but they went through the Cooksley wildfire last year. And I think it was somewhere around 50,000 acres. But they're actually, Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition is going to tour part of that fire the day before.
Okay.
And then we're going to have an educational field day the day after. So you could go to both events.
Okay. And what's that called?
We just call it the Nebraska Sandhills Grazing Conference.
Nebraska Sandhills Grazing Conference, and the date again?
June 13th.
All right.
Broken Bow, Nebraska.
I'll make sure we have links in the show notes. So, all right, make a note. So bus tour. Tell me about the bus tour since we're talking about it.
Bus tour, and I've been working on you because I want you and Tanya to try to go.
I can bring that thing and all these microphones, and we can do we can make some video.
So I started in May of 22. In August, we went to the Dakotas. I had never been. And we had 3-day tour there that, as the new guy, so Mike McDonald and Paul Yassa from Nebraska.
Yes.
They both just went off the board. They gifted me my first bus tour. They planned all the stops and all this, and all I had to do was basically call and coordinate lodging and some meals. Pretty simple, and show up. And then, we had some guys from Mississippi. We had guys from all over Kansas, Nebraska, had a lobbyist guy from Virginia, Washington, D.C. area come. So the conversations are really neat.
Okay.
Didn't think a whole lot about it the first few days. We had a mom, a dad, and 2 sons of an Amish family from around Hutch come to Hayes to get on the bus and go spend 3 days because they're tired of doing it the conventional way. They have a dairy and they're tired of farming, and we were in the drought. They were looking for more ways to grow forage with less inputs, and just to see people. And you talked about when you go to a conference, you recharge, right? You kind of get some energy if you don't have to speak 37 times.
Right.
If you're just there, they usually are beneficial to you. Well, this bus tour, have you ever been to the Dakotas up there to like Bismarck or?
I've flown to Bismarck. I've flown to Bismarck to speak. I've driven to Rapid City a couple times. Not terribly familiar, but
it's a really neat environment. And then when you get up there and you talk to like Dwayne Beck, Jay Fuhrer, guys that have been successful. Jay's, needle in a haystack, a really good ex-government employee that gets it. And
there's some of those running around.
Right. And he's retired. But when you get up there and you get to see them doing this stuff live and being successful doing it on a large scale, it's neat. And you have the camaraderie of being on that bus. So you're just sitting there visiting. They may buy a 6-pack of beer at the quick shop when we get fuel, and there may be drinking beer at 11 o'clock in the morning, driving down the road sharing. And it's just neat to see. We had a teacher he's from Protection. He lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's just I can't remember if he's like a junior high science teacher, but he has a community garden and stuff, and he went on that trip.
Okay.
When we went to Minokan, which we're going to go to Minokan again, they have a high tunnel urban garden thing with companion plantings, and Jay talked a little bit at conference about using bricks readings in the greenhouse. He had to relearn that when you have a cover over your greenhouse, you affect your bricks. Things are different because you don't get all the UV in there.
Okay, that's interesting.
So that's where it's really like, I talk Dakota Lakes, Rick Bieber's farm at Trail Cities in western South Dakota, that both those guys are more larger acreage cropland, right?
Right.
Which is okay. But when you think about the principles you can take from that, a gardener can learn something from a big farmer at times. But then it's also when we go to like Minokan, where they have that high tunnel, they've got, they're putting perennials back into their cropland for 5 years. They're seeding grass and seeing they hadn't taken it out yet, but we were joking, like, you have this nice pasture established now. How can you spray this out and go back to planting corn? And so it's just neat to see different things. And then we're lining up going back to Blackleg Ranch to see Jerry Doan and his boys. I don't know if you've met Jerry.
Oh yeah, we've met.
Yeah, he's got a neat. We think, is it Jay, his son, that came back that made the brewery there in the barn?
They all have J names.
There's Jay and Jace. I think Jay's the brewery guy.
Yes, Jay's the brewery guy. He's the one that's outspoken. Jace is the livestock guy, and he won't say 3 words.
And then I haven't met the outfitter one, the hunting guy, son.
I haven't either.
Because there's 3 boys and a daughter, right? 3 boys are home, daughter's not.
I think that's correct.
But we went to his barn last time. The guys all got to meet Jay. We went back and toured the brewery, and they're buying beer from him. So it's like this time I'm trying to figure out, okay, Jerry, can we sample some bison bites and drink beer with Jay and tour and see, because they have some cropland that benefits their livestock enterprise and their hunting, but to see somebody that's maybe thinking about stacking an enterprise. Or Jay's story would really resonate with someone wanting to come home of like, his dad said there's no place for you unless you bring an enterprise.
Yeah.
And when you listen to his business story of his, making his own recipe, using their well water that's been there since, I remember when he said the well was drilled 18 something. It's a story, right?
Right.
Stories now, they sell and they add to it.
It makes me think of, gosh, I can't remember who said it, but repeated it several times. Successful ranching operations, also successful farming operations in 20 years. You're going to be the ones that are selling their story today.
Yep. And they market, they have grass finished beef and bison. So it's, I think the big stops, Rick Bieber, Minokan, Blackleg Ranch and Dakota Lakes Research Farm there are the big stops. And we're still working on finalizing the smaller people that you go see, but those are the ones, the big ticket ones.
So how's it work? We jump on the bus and...
So this year, to help with, because the bus, you learn all this, you only get 500 miles a day or 10 hours of operation, or you have to pay a different driver. So then costs start going up.
Okay.
So you have to limit it to that. So instead of leaving Hayes this time, we're going to leave Kearney, Nebraska.
Okay.
Got a block of room set up there. And registration, I'm finalizing just a few things. Registration should be live this week for the bus tour.
So everybody gets to Kearney, checks in the motel. The next morning we get up and get on the bus.
Yep.
Okay.
And that room is not going to be included in your registration, but everything else is. Once you get on the bus, we have all your meals, your snacks, everything. The only thing we don't buy is if you want to drink beer, that's on you, which is pretty good. We have a good set of sponsors. Green Cover and Exapta. There are big sponsors at Winter Conference. So we appreciate that they've done that. When you do that, you tie on to your sponsor for every event for the year. So without their support, again, these events don't happen. Because when you start running a bus tour for 52-ish paid people, you're over $30,000 for a 3-day bus tour.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yep. Then you got to throw in food and motel.
And we try to keep it around $300 if you'll share a room with somebody. If you want a single room, it costs more because they got to pay for more rooms.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we try to for $300, $100 a day, you can't do much anywhere.
You can't even really eat for $100 a day
No.
if you're not at home anymore.
No.
Is it?
Trying to sprinkle again.
It's trying to rain again.
Yeah.
That'll be nice in the background.
Yeah. But the bus tour, I'd never been on one, and now I do think it was something that really recharged me, got me excited again. Being out here in conventional ag land this time, easy to get down. I've been talking, Michael Thompson. It's been a really good friend, especially since I've been in no-till about, man, it's been tough for the last few years. We get no rain, then we got a bunch of rain. Then they got hail and got no crops with a wet year. So it is really easy to get down or to get depressed. And then having this network of friends, these peer groups that we form in these areas, to me, these are vital for me to be able to continue in agriculture. I think I would have fizzled out already in ag if I wouldn't have met Gail Fuller. To hear someone that had been through some big suck.
He went through a lot of it.
And to come out and just tell you a story and keep plugging away, that really resonates with me.
Yeah. Yes, he's getting fairly good rains over there too.
I think, yeah. He finally said he had water running from the spring again and the ponds were full. And
yeah, it's just been awful dry last 3 years. I don't feel so bad talking about it while it's raining.
Yeah, last year, I think at my house, with around 32 inches of precipitation, but we still had ponds go dry.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we're still functioning on rainfall because we didn't infiltrate what we should, because we're still getting better, trying to increase organic matter so we can hold it when we do get it in there and use it.
And the number just doesn't mean what it used to mean.
They happen faster. You see it. You used to get an inch of rain, it'd last. Now it's 3 or 4 days, 110, things are stressed. It's hard.
Is that because it's... I've tried to say it in my head and it sounds stupid. Is that because it's hotter and drier? Well, yeah, dummy, it's hotter and drier. That's why it feels hotter and drier. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is the rains that we are getting, are they less effective than they could be or should be because we have more dryness in the atmosphere and there's more evapotranspiration?
There's something going on. Things aren't as resilient. They don't even, Nave pasture. You and Ted you don't have to clip and weigh anymore. You can pretty much glance at it. This is how many pounds of forage I have left. Run cows for this many days. This is how much I want left to burn or winter or whatever. It's not like that as much anymore. Like last year we were talking, I think we did one of these earlier last year.
Yeah.
Of how grass was headed out 3 to 4 weeks ahead of when it should have been. Way shorter,
but it also didn't grow until the 1st of June.
Yep.
I mean, and granted, here we are sitting in literally the middle of May and warm season grass isn't awake yet, but we've got more. I mean, a year ago, if we were sitting here a year ago, everything behind us would have been brown.
Yep.
There would have been leaves on those trees.
Yep.
And when there's not leaves on the trees in mid-May, that scared the hell out of me.
I was talking to Macy that it seemed like my wife anymore. March and April used to be when we kind of would grow wheat crop and get primed for warm season grass. And these last about 3 years, we don't have March and April precipitation. So
it's like we have winter, extended winter.
Into summer. Like we had some days in April over 90.
Yeah.
I had a picture I sent to someone as 99 degrees.
And then
in April.
94, 97, I think is what I saw that day,
and
like the 10th or 12th or something.
Yuck.
Yeah.
So it seems like your comment about rainfall events, that they've become less frequent, more severe, right? So we get our 22 inches of precipitation that we should get, but we don't get it like we used to, right? Like we got half our rainfall in May, June, and July, grow 75% of our grass.
And
so that's where I was like, I can get a good May, June, and July and be okay if the rest of the year's not scorching hot dry.
And I think last year for me really drives that point home, because it was May, June, and a little bit in July. That's where I got all of my rain.
Right.
And, kind of like you just alluded to, the grass didn't even wake up. Like, there was nothing growing until the 1st of June. The trees didn't even set leaves. The sand plums didn't even have leaves on them. Like, everything was just screaming for moisture. Then it started raining. I think it was like the 24th or 26th.
It was
over
like the
here.
last few days of April.
May.
We got one system like the 28th, 29th, but it didn't start consistently raining until May.
I think I missed those rains in April.
It might have.
But yeah, when it started raining in May, it just kind of kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. I kept watching the grass. We're mid-June, nothing's growing, nothing. Then all of a sudden, 4th of July, just everything explodes. And then the 1st of August, my big blue and my Indian grass went to seed. And I'm like, this is well over a month early.
Yep.
And it's not like it got hot.
It got hot. August got hot, but from the annuals, looking at them, but perennials should be more cushioned from those effects. That's why I like perennials. They're just, they may not have the sexy numbers, that corn does, but they're more consistent. I can predict them better, right? I mean, you're already probably somewhere in your drought plan.
Pretty far down, actually, honestly. Well, where we're at is I pulled back and I made cuts. I made a rate cut and I made a day cut. So aggregate, we're probably 40% off a baseline, which is roughly not far off where we were last year.
Yeah, and we're running off last year's gains on the grass. I mean, we're eating a lot of leftover grass, which is good to have.
My grass is mostly living off moisture we got in the winter in these last 2 rains that total maybe 2 inches in the last 2 weeks, and that's all we've had. Which, okay, what am I going to grow for grass? I'll have at least 600 pounds an acre. I'll have at least 600 pounds an acre that I can probably take. Which, a lot, but
no, you'd like it to be
not a lot.
A couple thousand.
Rather it be up where, 1,800 pounds of harvestable grass. Yep. That's a great money-making place to be. But, it is what it is, and can't control how much I make. All I can control is how much I spend. And, it's easier when it rains.
It is. It makes it seem easier, and it covers up a lot of mistakes. I don't remember. I think it's one of my grandpas said, rain makes a good farmer. Like, be as good as you want to be, but rain is what makes a good farmer. So trying to be everything, having the soils prepared for when it does rain, because it's going to rain. We just have to be successful when it does, the best we can be.
And, I remember hearing when I was a kid, oh, we got to go bust that. We got to go out and break that crust so that rain will soak in. And looking back, what an odd statement to make. What an odd statement. We have to go burn diesel fuel to remove the capping that our poor soil management practices left after the last rain event, so maybe this rain event will soak in more than 1/4 of an inch an hour before it recaps the soil and it runs off.
Grew up a conventional farm kid that spent 14 or 15 hours a day, as a 13-year-old, chiseling ground after wheat harvest, burning the straw off of fields. Then, come back and you're running an undercutter, and probably before, to kill weeds, before harvest, we probably ran over with the disc to get the clods out of it. And if the weeds came on, we either ran a harrow or a crust buster. So, I did it all the stuff that makes me cringe now. Like when I drive by and see someone deep ripping something, I did all that. Because I didn't know any better.
I've done it too, and I've done it in that field right across the street.
And it's just like, but you learned you don't have a tractor anymore. Ted put it all to grass, and you're not farming anymore.
maybe it's a blessing the way he got the ranch, and he just didn't get a tractor.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't on the asset list. Well, it was. It was a 65 horsepower Massey Ferguson tractor. You're not going to get a whole lot of farming done in 1985 with that kind of tractor. So.
No, and I love that someone likes to farm and makes it work, because I have cows, and man, I like renting crop residue, whether it's corn stalks, milo stalks. In our operation, it fits because I'm close to it. You're not as close to as much agriculture over here.
No.
You're more grass and bottom ground.
Any farming around here around my ranch is wheat pasture, and that's generally spoke 4 years in advance.
Every year. Yep.
And when it's not, it's really expensive, and there's usually not water on it. Well, all right.
Or fans.
All right, I'll take off my black hat now. Where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah. As long as it works economically for both sides.
Well, I don't know why that kind of brings up a discussion we were having about spending money, and so the question came up about fertility. What's fertility cost? How much is what's it cost for fertilizer? What's it cost for nitrogen application, whatnot? So I had this figured, and I figured this like 4 years ago, and I used some studies that were basically from confinement operations, but they were studying the ration, what the ration was, and what was in the dung, what was in the manure and the urine. And granted, it was collected into a pit and then taken out and analyzed as liquid. Liquid manure versus manure falling on the pasture are going to be different things. So the data is obviously flawed.
Right.
But I took what they said was in the manure and the urine. I attributed that to a standard animal unit. And I said, okay, what happens if we're grazing at 50,000 pounds per acre with these standard animal units? How much of this fertility is getting to the pasture? And it came up with basically like $55 an acre worth of NPK that your cows are dropping when you're grazing at 50,000 pounds an acre. You and I were like, yeah, okay, that's great. What the hell is 50,000 pounds an acre? What does that look like? And how do you figure that out? That's kind of the most common question I get.
Just 50 cows, right? Everybody has 1,000-pound cows.
It's just 50 cows. It's just 50 cows on an acre. Okay? I mean, anybody that thinks they have 1,000-pound cow haven't put one on a scale in a while. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I try to have that, and I still have cows that are too big. Now, if you got Corianis like you did have, you can get them smaller.
I had some 900-pound cows.
I have some older, which they probably got too much guts, but I have some older Angus cows, 7+ that don't weigh over 1,000 bred. They're nice, but I don't have. Not all of them are like that.
I sold all the cows.
Yep.
So what's interesting is
you took a class from Logan Pribino, right? Cash in on market being good.
I mean, when one of the guys you bought cows from 4 years ago buys them back for more than you paid, and he's happy about the deal, I think that's a good deal. So a bunch of them went back to Josh and Gwen Hoy in the Flint Hills. My buddy Brendan ended up with a bunch of them, and my buddy Tim, who you also know as well from that property on the state line, which if you don't want to say anything about that, that's fine. If you want to talk about it, we can get into that. But no, Brendan just sent, he's one of my custom graze clients. He just sent me back cows just Saturday, and been having fun the last 2 days out there riding through them, writing down all my tag numbers and getting to know about, I think 14 of them are still out there. So like close to 10%. And I'm having a hard time picking them out from his good black ones that he's worked on and bred. But once I finally start picking them out, I'm like, yeah, okay, your legs are a little bit skinny. Oh, that's one of mine. Oh, you got a little bit extra white on your belt. Yep, that's one of mine.
Right, I remember listening to Wally talk here about
Wally Olson?
Yeah, Wally Olson. Somebody asked him about, high blacks making money in the cattle business. He said, he was a younger guy, because he said, boy, I can make more money with, mismatched, colored up cattle every day of the year than you will with trying to raise high blacks top of the market.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, that's kind of a brave statement to make. But they got to be profitable.
Wally can back it up.
Yeah, he came and did a couple of those. He did a talk, and then he did a marketing school for the pool. So I got to spend a couple of days with Wally. He's running sheep numbers and buying sheep in like Wyoming and running them on a partnership with somebody. And he's a character.
I got a call from a friend of mine. He's like, hey, I need you to go look at a bull for me. Don't have anybody else close to you. You go look at a bull for me. Yeah, sure. What am I looking at and where is it? So he tells me where it is. I'm like, okay. So I call the guy. I'm like, I got to come look at this. But turns out I know this person. So I call him up and I'm like, tell me about this bull. So he starts telling me about this bull. Well, it turns out it's one of Wally's bulls. Sometimes it's just such a ridiculously small world.
Mm-hmm. Especially this circle. You start meeting people. What I'm struggling with is you start looking like Wally, Dwayne Beck, Dakota Lakes, Jay Fuhrer, a lot of this knowledge that have got us to where we are in this change and thinking of things different. Those guys aren't getting any younger.
Mm-mm.
And you start looking at some of the up and comers, there's not a lot to replace that. And it's just like when they get to come to conference, and I feel spoiled. I get paid to learn every day the stuff that I can take to my operation. And when I go to winter conference, I get 3 or 4 days that I get to go upstairs and drink a beer or have some bourbon with these guys and have, the conversation I want to have. Like last year, I got to spend 3 days with David Brandt. That was awesome.
For those who might not know, who is David Brandt?
The godfather of soil health. And unfortunately, we lost him last May?
Yeah.
It was May. So it's kind of neat to be in on the surprise, giving him the first annual. Well, it's not an annual. So we have a new award kind of developed by Jimmy Emmons and the board, the David Brandt Legacy Award.
Yeah.
And it is, I took back my annual comment because they don't want to just give it every year to somebody to give it to them. Like it has to have a life work in soil health and helping people. They really like people that genuinely just do it. Like, David Brandt didn't get rich going around and talking, selling his knowledge. He just called people up, say, hey, I'm stopping by, talk about this. His speaking fee for conference was $500. He could have got 10 times that much from most people.
Yeah.
This year we had Jay Fuhrer, another soil warrior that's done it. We talked earlier, he worked in conservation for 30 years. It's guys that aren't doing it for the fame or for the money, that are doing it for the right reasons. We need change because we have to do better. At some point, we're going to be forced to change. So we need to be ahead of it. Right? Change is a lot more comfortable when you choose it versus when you're forced to.
Carrot versus stick, right?
Most men, though, like to change when it hurts. We talked about the pain. Like, we don't change until we have to.
Yeah. Well, because that hammock gets pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
So what else you got? I don't even know how long we've been going. Probably at least an hour.
That's pretty much what I have on my notes. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was mental health of the farming, ranching, agriculture community. We talked about the low net profit.
Mine hasn't been great lately.
It's hard.
It's
when you keep seeing or getting texts that so-and-so committed suicide,
you shared that with me.
I just got that yesterday. A friend's brother in agriculture, 61-year-old farmer, committed suicide. that it just keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and we try and we're actually to where we're talking about this now. 5 years ago, we weren't talking about this. It's nope, you're just going to be tougher than this and get through it.
Yeah, we were trying 5 years ago.
Yeah. We had a couple mental health sessions at conference this year. When I looked back through the surveys, Dr. Sean Brotherson from North Dakota State University, I'd taken a training with him on, basically a first line of defense to give farmers and ranchers. When you have a producer walk into your extension office and tell you that this is going bad and their first line of defense is they just blow their head off, that makes you gulp. I needed some help. So I went to this training to be able to deal with a comment like that versus being like, oh, you're joking. No, there's something there. We need to get you.
They might not be serious this time.
Whatever help that you want. I'm not saying I'm going to call the Iroquois Center and have you committed. But I had a packet that had some numbers to call. And that's we get back into like these events, the no-till family, High Plains, no-till all those. You talked about the friends you meet there and you see there, your network, your support system. It's vital to today. I mean,
is that one of the reasons you're trying to do the summer conference in Nebraska and do the bus tours? You're trying to maybe get some more events in other times of year, spread that out of just conference season.
That, and you think about what's the average age of the producer doing? It's not getting any younger. Right?
It's going up. It like goes up 1.2 years every year or something.
So we're a nonprofit, but you got to make money or you're out of business, right?
Yeah.
Even as a nonprofit.
Costs money to have the Marriott for a couple of days.
Yeah, the bill's $60,000 for the 3 days for the venue, food, good facility. I have minimal work there. I really enjoy their staff. But the reason we're trying to branch out is you still have to go meet people where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
You have to recruit new audiences. There's young guys in the crowd that want to be producers that maybe don't have any tie or a grandpa, dad, anybody. We were in Franklin last year, Nebraska, at a field day, Jody Sathoff Memorial Field Day. It was in June. And there was a kid there that sat at the front all day, took lots of questions, asked lots of notes, was all over in the soil pit with Ray Ward and Jay Fuhrer asking questions. And there were some board members that talked to him afterwards, and all he wants to do is be a farmer when he gets out of high school. I think he was 16 or 17, so he had a year or so left. But he had no family in agriculture. So he was just there trying to learn to be able to take something somewhere someday. And I'm like,
that's the future.
This whole day was worth it with that story. So that's like, so the reason we're doing this is to keep meeting people where they're at, keep getting new people to conference, because that diversity is really what drives change. And man, you learn so much when somebody's like, why do you do it this way? I do it this way. I'm like, and we meet new speakers like you. Some of the reasons I go to other conferences, go to these things, is to meet or vet out speakers.
Yeah.
To see
podcast guests.
Yeah. I got asked the other day, they're like, do you have a no-till podcast? I don't think I'm ready for that.
It's work.
It is work. And you have to want to do it like consistently. If you're just once or twice a year, I'm not going to have that whippy of a following.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking like meet people where they're at. Well, what about a bus tour that went down US 400 to Pueblo, and then you hook it south and you go down into New Mexico?
We talked to Nick Voss a little bit about going back to Texas, Oklahoma. But I think with the drought, the fires, they need a year to see something. I mean, it's tough down there on good years, but it'd be nice if we had a good year and then went down the next year.
Yeah.
And sometimes your sponsors of events dictate maybe where you go. Because we have, if you don't have any business in Texas, why would you want to sponsor a bus tour to go to Texas? Some sponsors don't care.
Open new markets. I mean,
Right. Right.
But if you don't have,
I'd love to go do something in New Mexico sometime. Went down to Cimarron and went to a grazing workshop with Understanding Ag. And Alejandro Carrillo and Gabe and Alan and Ray were all there. Beautiful country. I had never been there, and spent 5 days of class and then had to get back to work.
yeah,
So I was like, I want to go back just to go. And seeing in a worse environment than we are, because it's way further west.
and south.
It is the desert. Seeing soil health practices in the desert benefit that place stuck out there. The ranch we were on was a shining star compared to right across the road.
And I guess that's kind of what my point would be, as we're trying to learn how to manage a changing climate, because climate's changing.
It always has.
Yeah. Like the only thing that thought the climate was stable is our short attention span. Like just because we have like 30 years of observation, we base all our weather patterns off of that. Like that's pretty dumb. Like we need to be continually updating these models and understand that the climate patterns that we thought we understood was maybe just a relatively long period of climate stability that we're not going to enjoy for a while. So, but as we endure more climate change and move into the future, my dad has said this for at least 15 years. He said, the trend here is hotter and drier. Look 100 miles southwest and plan on ranching there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe like 250 miles southwest. Now, granted, if you live in Pueblo, Colorado, you can't move 250 miles southwest and figure out how to ranch.
Right.
But what the point of that is plan on 2 to 4 more degrees temperature and 2 to 4 inches less of rain.
I can do the 2 to 4 inches less of moisture. It's when we get 40 or 50%. That's when you get out of your comfort zone and you start, you got to do crazy things. The way I learned how to high density graze was because I had this many acres to run this many cows and it was dry. I did my math and I could run a cow this area for one day to get through the entire growing season, and then calves would be stripped and cows would be sold, and when I got done, it rained. So I got to keep them. And
you had like 4 blades of grass left.
Yeah, and it's like, wow. And at least I learned how to do high density in the winter. You can still mess it up, but it's not like you're defoliating a plant July 15th and 110 degrees, but it's not the same either. Plants don't respond the same. I just learned more about taking and evaluating how much I wanted to take versus how much I took and what they ate. And
you think that more people come to regenerative agriculture because they're broke?
Yep.
Or because they're doing well and just want to make a change? It almost kind of sounds a little crappy to say, but like I never bought. I do things the way I do them because it's cheap. My dad was cheap.
mm-hmm.
I mean, some people could say frugal. If you want to call me cheap, that's fine.
Right.
I prefer low cost. Gabe Brown, love that guy. He would never started soil. He would ever got kicked down the road of soil health if he would have had money to buy
without
fertilizer.
Being broke.
Yeah. And I didn't know Dave. Maybe Dave Brandt was the same way. But there's a lot of people in that never would have come, or that got to regenerative agriculture, got to soil health because they couldn't afford to do something and had to find a lower no cost way to do that.
Yeah, Dave had something similar. Dave, he had to go to the Army for a while. He got put on a bus, and I think by the time he called his wife the next morning, he was already overseas doing something.
Sounds like something the Army might do.
It's fast. And he said, they were milking cows, milk the cows in the morning, and they'll be by to get them this afternoon. We're selling them, and through that, I think they ended up losing their first farm. They had to sell it, and then they bought another one when they came back. So yeah, it was another one if he was trying to prevent erosion and grow his own fertilizer. He could grow it cheaper than he could buy it.
You know, I think a lot of people also want to be Will Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even said it at one point, like I want to be like Will Harris when I grow up. Or, you know, I want to replicate what Will Harris has done. And I'm not saying it's not replicatable. I don't have the talent to replicate it.
I don't want to work that hard.
I don't either.
That sounds like I worked for Lordings here for several years. Really good mentors, Arlie, Mark, good grazers, good operators. Always joked, or, told him, I was like, man, I can't wait till I'm in charge of something, that I'm the manager, that I'm the boss, and then finally get enough stuff and catch Mark a few years ago. I'm like, man, it sure was easier just being the worker than being the manager that has to make the call of, okay, this day we sell cows if it hasn't rained, or we're going to early wean, or this is what we're doing. Like, there's a lot of stress in the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the regenerative system. At least I'm not just Columbus grazing anymore, turning them all out, trying to get through the end of the year, or the cows tear the fence down because they're out of grass. I mean, it gives me a better estimate. Last year we had a wet year. We had 45% of our grass we didn't even use. So I was going to burn this year. Then it's dry. So called off all burns.
I did the same thing.
And it's like, you learn. But you only know what you know, right? I didn't know it was going to rain, so I deferred those places for drought. We try to be overstocked on half the ranch and no stocked on the other part. That way, we got cushion. So if we run out, we go over and we know our time's up because we got a year and we're done.
I kind of look at it as a third. Like, I need to be banking a little bit. Some of it I need to be using, and some of it I need to be just, taking about half.
Right.
Some of it I need to use hard, and some of it I need to not use. Because, there's years shift. And, like you said, last year you grazed 45% of your grass. It was right at a year ago when I made my stocking decisions. And I thought I was going to be a little bit overstocked based on the rainfall. Like, it's a scary thing to say, yeah, you can haul them to grass the last week of May, but you might have to go home in July, maybe the 1st of August.
Yep.
Like, that's all I can promise you. That was a scary thing, especially for a guy that's trying to make a living custom grazing. But then all the rain that we got in May and June, we got all the way through July. I still had plenty of grass. We get down to the 1st of August and I go start doing inventory. Like, I'm not even half stocked. It was an interesting,
right?
It was fastest that any area has gone from D4 to D0. And now 12 months later, we're back to D3. Life on the plains, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a semi-arid environment that's prone to erratic fluctuations, right?
If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. If it was easy, there wouldn't be 40,000 acre ranches out here. There'd be 41,000 acre ranches.
Yeah. Yeah, and then realizing, I gave a talk last year for a General Mills field day on a systems approach to grazing. And I talked about, it was the first year in my life, they always talk about high density wanting to mimic the bison herds, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's still people saying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what did the bison do when they got dry and there was nothing here?
They left.
Right. So I realized I did put wheels under every cow I owned, and they left all of my ground I paid rent on, and they went to some CRP and crop residue. So they left. And then that's when it rained last year, the gains I got on the grass.
Probably
awesome,
incredible.
Because they weren't messed with when we had nothing. So it's like learning the balance of, the old time grazing when the big herds formed all this soil. They didn't have fences, they didn't have areas, right? They had predators, the Indians chased them a little bit. The Indians may have burnt to get them where they wanted them, to hunt them. But they left, they moved.
Okay. I guess we haven't had this conversation. I've had it several times, I think, with other folks on the podcast, other parts of it. So kind of like our weather. Some of the things that you just mentioned, I think, are based on a very narrow slice of observed history. And yes, those things were happening at one time, but we got to kind of go back and consider some of the whole history of the plains, the last 500 to 600 years. They're finding remnants of cities 100 miles east here on the Arkansas River by Ark City, called Etzanoa. They started calling the area from Ark City and even a little bit south into Oklahoma and all the way up to Great Bend. That's what they're calling Quivira now. And some of the Spanish explorers, they were talking about Quivira. Well, that's where it was. And they were talking about the tens and hundreds of thousands of Native Americans that lived in Quivira.
Mm-hmm.
That when the next expedition came through, there was nothing here. Well, that's because you brought a bunch of sick prisoners in your army. When you roped that up after you left, everybody got smallpox and yellow fever, malaria, and died. Thanks. But at least we have some of those. So what I'm saying is, like, the history of the plains, I think we observed a very narrow slice and are making a lot of assumptions based on that.
Yep.
Were there huge herds of buffalo? There's no doubt that there were.
I think there were at certain times of the year. I don't think they were in the millions every day of the year.
No. And I think that before the beaver were extirpated from North America, starting roughly around 1700, like, you can't look at this river bottom we're sitting in right now and tell me this wasn't a beaver bog. Like,
right.
Why else would the soil have deposited here? Why else would it be fertile and have a lot more organic matter than the hills and the hilltops?
You think about the most, and when you talked about Tim earlier, when I met him last week, the most important thing to grazing is water.
Yes.
We can grow a lot of grass here, but we usually run out of water or can't get water where we need it economically. So when we got rid of the beavers, we really hurt the distribution of grazing because we didn't have them maintaining the riparian areas, satellite little water holes, right?
Right. And change the grazing distribution. I think that's a very important point. Now, we got to kind of zoom out, look at it from a 30,000 foot view. How much would a half a mile wide beaver bog, how much would that have impeded movement of bison? And I've heard varying theories, and I would just think that bison would need a really damn good reason to get in the water and get slowed down in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
Like a really good reason.
Yeah.
And what am I getting at? I mean, maybe there were herds that were large that roamed areas between beaver bogs, between rivers. And there were corridors that went up and down between. Maybe there were places where they would cross. But the tricky thing is, after 3 or 4 years, when a beaver's gone, it's really hard to tell where one of their dams are. I mean, you really, really got to look hard and know what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. It's just when we start changing the landscape, we didn't make it easier. Right?
Right.
Just, I was like, well, another question I have. So in agriculture, why do we, as a whole, why are we afraid to spend money on continuing education? Is it because we know it all? Or is it because we're comfortable and we don't want to be pushed out of that? That's one thing. I was talking to like Michael Thompson, because he's a past kindergarten teacher. My local family physician, Melanie Dunn. Those types of occupations, professional occupations, require you to do continuing education. So many hours a year to keep your license.
Paramedics,
right?
cops.
So in agriculture, we get to do all this with no I mean, Now, if you're going broke,
Well, by God, you can't tell me how to farm.
and I don't want to. I just want them to go to things to continue to learn. And maybe that's, I never thought I'd be a lifelong learner, but the older I get, the more I am. I just know, like, when somebody's like, well, how many cows can I run on this for a day? I don't know. We can find out. I can tell you what I think it is, and we can mess with it and we can do it. And the worst thing is we mess it up and we got to give it more rest.
Yeah.
Like, but if we do something really cool, we could double your stocking capacity of your ranch. Doesn't mean you can run double cows all the time, but we could double the capacity. So getting to understand that, getting more mature and understanding that my biggest gains have been going places and learning, like these field days, like this bus tour, conferences.
Yes.
And when you look at that grazing workshop's $30. If you can get to Kearney, we'll feed you lunch for $30. You have a whole day. It's a pretty good investment for your day.
Right. Okay, so it's an interesting question, and I think about this a lot, and especially when I go to a conference and it's not a producer-led conference. You're here to talk about America's grasslands, and less than 5% of the people here are producers. What are you doing? Who are you talking to? Well, make sure you sign in for your CEU credits.
Right.
That's why a lot of them are there. They're there because their boss is paying them to be there. They were paid mileage. They're getting paid their wage while they're there, and they get a hotel room covered. When I want to go to Soil Health U, if they haven't invited me to speak, I'm taking time away from work, away from my agricultural operation. So that means somebody has to cover my chores to take care of my animals when I'm not here. I have to pay for the hotel room out of my pocket. I'm not getting per diem, so I'm paying for meals out of pocket. And I pay for conference rent. And then, you conference organizer, you sumbitch you have the audacity to ask me for $300 to come to your conference. What am I possibly going to learn there? I've got work to do.
Yeah.
So there's that argument of it. I mean,
and I'm looking up.
So Tim and I were just talking, and he's thinking about getting back into Executive Link, which I support. I'd fully support that. I'm thinking about going back myself. But I said, Tim, here's the thing. Other than the money, it's 21 days. It's 21 days of travel, 21 days of sitting in meetings, and 21 days of sitting in the office preparing. That's your time commitment. It's 21 days you got to do of not doing ranch
3
work.
or 5 day meetings on the Executive Link? Because
it'd be a 3-day meeting.
3 days.
So I figured 3-day meetings. So 3-day meetings is 9. Then you've got 6 travel days is 15 days. And then you got another week to prepare in the office. I figured it's 21 days that you're spending on it every year. And that kind of tracks.
President of our board right now, Ben Kramer from out at the Ely Dighton area, he's on Executive Link.
So what I'm saying is it's a time commitment, and you're spending money. If somebody wants to go to Ranching for Profit, insert ding here. It's a significant amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But when you break it down on what you're getting per day, that's the hotel, that's the food,
right,
and that's 8 hours of knowledge. It's a bargain. I mean, like what did no-till registration? What was it, $300?
Just
$250?
I think it's $305 for general, for the 2-day general.
2 days, $300, and you give us lunch and a beer hour. And you're going to educate me for 8 hours?
And
every day?
I've been to conferences that the speakers are unapproachable, like to where if they speak, they go out their back door, get in their car and leave, right?
Yeah.
The speakers here stay at the same hotel. You get to go to beer hour, and then you get to turn around and go down and sit and drink with them at the bar.
Yes.
And talk, and then eventually we end upstairs in the presidential suite of whoever comes up and sit there and drink beer longer. Or get the coffee pot out and talk. I mean, that's where the most learning I've had at these has been usually over a beer 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Or standing in a hallway in between sessions. That's where I've gotten a lot of learning and a lot of networking done, is just standing in the hallway in between sessions, or at a random vendor booth in the trade show. Person walks up and just start talking, and it's like, oh, you're interesting as hell.
Yeah.
But
I want to change that. I don't know if it's I don't know what it is. If it's a little bit of the, I got work to do. Some of it is, I know we talked about net farm income is down. Guys are really hurting right now. The grain don't pencil out at all. Cattle, talking to Logan, cattle are an all-time high. Margins smaller than it was a year ago when you actually run the numbers.
Yep.
So it's hard to get excited about, and Wally, another thing Wally said was high prices cure high prices, right? So we know this is going to go down, swings, cycles of, I'm trying to also find scholarship pools available to get some of the guys on the fence to be able to come. So I do have some scholarships available for the bus tour too, through a grant that we wrote.
Okay.
So it's like, and it's for historically underserved audiences. So it's men it can be men, because I didn't want to alienate anybody with, women, beginning farmers. That's one.
I was going to say, like, is there maybe a way we could do a sliding scale where a guy like me would get like half price, but a dude that's like 60 would have to pay 90%, but somebody that's 18 has to pay $5?
We do have a student rate. If you're a student rate, you're less than 50% to conference.
Okay.
It's like $120 or $150 for the deal.
Are you going to try to do something similar for bus tour? Like,
Bus tour is pretty much set this time, other than those scholarships. The scholarships, and it depends how many people apply and all this, but the scholarship will pay for 100% of their bus tour.
Okay.
They will have to get to Kearney on their own, but it pays for 100%.
Where can people find out about that scholarship?
So everything is on our website. I need to put the scholarship on the website. I just emailed that out to some groups we work with in other states that would have some of that target audience, newer people.
The good news is you have exactly 7 days before everybody else gets to hear this, and they're going to go to notill.org
Okay.
and want to find that.
Yeah.
So.
I'll make a note. I need to get the scholarship. But the best way to see, and I know not everybody's social media, we share all this on Facebook, Twitter. I'm trying to get comfortable with TikTok. I'm not a TikToker, but I'll post some. I'll post the flyer and a song, or because we are in the age where the young people like to see that stuff. So
Yes.
I'm trying to not just be like, I've always done it this way. I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone on some of that.
Make a silly meme.
And I think it still works. If you go to our website, which is www.notill.org, scroll down to the bottom, you can subscribe to our mailing list, which should populate my MailChimp account that I can get you in when these things go out.
Good mailing list to be on.
I don't spam you.
No, really don't. So last question I have for you today comes from my buddy Tim. We spoke this morning about the
ballot ranch.
I wasn't gonna mention that name.
Yeah.
We spoke this morning about that, and I guess we'll turn that camera off here in a minute, and I'll turn you loose, and we can talk all about that. But Tim really wanted to know, when you moved your calving date to May, you said you saved $100 a head. How? Talk numbers.
So my numbers on that were when I came back.
Well, look, when were you calving before you moved to May?
So when I came back, we calved January 1 to December 31st.
Awesome.
A year round. And then we lost our big lease, went to a smaller pasture. And, by the time I was like full-time home every day helping, we were down to 90-acre pasture with 5 giant cows and 1 bull. So we calved in March, usually, because we shared a bull with an uncle who calved in February.
Okay.
He'd run him for a while, we'd run him. So one year we got the bull late, and we didn't calve until like April 10th. And we had big cows. I'm AI, and to try to get replacement females that are smaller. Not because I enjoy AI or the cows do. I wanted genetics different than the bull that I had.
Okay.
So we're getting there. And where it really, when we went from the March to April, my grandpa always said, April 15th is grass season. We had leases from April 15th to October 15th. It's grass. Grass season to me means it should be big enough for a cow to bite it and function.
I think 20 years ago, maybe April 15th.
We talked March and April precipitation don't seem to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't have any grass. So or green grass, I got brown grass. So I'm supplementing protein to cows in March and April when they're lactating, and they have a higher rate of need of supplementation to function, right?
Because lactation is when the cow's nutrition requirement is the highest.
They've just calved, so they lost a body condition score. So I want them at a 5 or 6. I don't want them to go any less than a 4, 4.5 ever, if I can, on normal black cows. They need to stay fat to do good. Usually how they look at calving is how they're going to breed, been my experience. But when I had to feed protein and supplement more or provide better forage than the brown forage, it was about $100 a cow a year in savings just in feed cost. I can make it through the whole winter grazing, feed minimal protein, but those 2 months, 45 days, I had to feed more than I did all winter because the grass wasn't there and they were calving, lactating. So that's where I got that number. When I moved to May, April has a little bit of piddle grass that kind of comes on.
Yeah.
And they can kind of just start shedding out their winter coat and stay where they're at after I've kept them through the winter. We supplement protein 1 day a week, 5 pounds, a 20% cake 1 day a week, all winter.
That's a
If
lot.
it's a nice week, we don't do any. And
You're even
fat.
cheaper than I am.
Cows are employees. They're happy. Well, like I said earlier, we like to graze crop residue, milo or corn stalks. Milo's better.
Yeah.
When I just moved polywire in front of them, like I learned at Community Pool meeting from Jim Garish, he said there's enough protein in any place, right, if you ration it out to get a cow herd through the year.
Yep.
Like, okay, challenge accepted. I could do it when I get to cropland, as long as they got a little bit of milo or grain to chase. That rumen's always functioning, right? And I can get energy cheaper than I can get protein if she's grazing it.
Yes.
Because we want energy, proteins to make energy, right? So let's just get energy. That's always been my thoughts. Now, somebody may say I'm crazy. I let the cows tell me how they're doing. They look good. They're bred. You know it when you start paying attention, when you bunch them up. You can tell the difference in a content tug or a hurried up, you messed up, and that rumen wasn't full and primed, and
Yep.
you're behind, and then you're behind several days until you get it caught back up. It's just, that's what I told Tim. I said, you can hear cows when they're happy.
Yeah.
And that's like when everybody, we talked earlier, going to meetings, learning, always in a hurry, always something to do. Some of the best time is just to take out your big chief pad and go set in the cows after you move them and just listen to them. See what they're eating. Listen, like the bird back here in the trees.
One of the things I like to do would be to go out and just sit in the middle of a herd, pen, paper, and you see something walk up, write down the first thing you thought of. Damn, that's a good looking cow. Nice profile.
Right.
Crappy legs.
Yeah.
Stupid looking horns. Crazy eye. This one really looks good. Great
Right.
example. Hasn't shed it off in July. WTF.
Mm-hmm.
Make some observations, start looking at other things. Maybe that's one of the things that I don't notice what everybody else notices in the pasture.
Yeah, I'm usually looking, when I'm in the pasture, first thing I'm looking at is the grass. I want to see the indicator species. I want to see what desirables you have. Like, do you have the legumes that you and I know that some people don't, like catcall sensitive briar, lead plant, things that you don't see in 95% of the places around here, unless it's somewhere where there's a fence cows can't get because they love them,
Right.
or seeing eastern gamma grass.
When you figure out how to grow eastern gamma grass around here, you let me know.
I got it right by the corral.
I need to steal some seed.
But I need to move. I've been pulling some off. I got to figure out how to stratify it so I can plant it.
I need to steal. Yeah. I mean, I need to get some seed because allegedly it should grow here.
And this is right within 100 yards of the windmill. So it would have been the highest traffic area of the whole pasture. I put in a fence, controlled grazing 3 years ahead of eastern gamma grass.
Interesting.
I had a clump come up in the corral, but then it didn't last. So it's learning. And the thing about moving to May calving, I know some guys that cannot calve in May because they have scour problem in May. Don't know why. Everybody's herd has different bugs they fight with. Some of it, I personal thoughts on scours is usually something's going on in the grass. There's an imbalance between too much new grass and not enough brown grass, so then maybe that cow's got a little acidic and she's passing that on, and that's burning that cow's gut or that calf's gut and causing it.
Move the cows.
But I know when you post dead ones and when you've doctored them and you know what virus you're dealing with, that those viruses are always in them. It's what's making them susceptible.
Right.
So I'm really big on whatever your operation is your context of where you need to be. Like, not everybody's the same. I mean, I turn out bulls around the 1st of August. Everybody's like, it's hot. They're not going to breed cows.
Like they'll breed at night.
I'll tell you, when July and August, when I went to chase girls, it was at the lake, you know. It was hot all day, but eventually it cools off.
You know, when people are saying, oh, why are you turning out your bull in June, July, or July, August? Because I want to calve in April, May. Because we have grass in April, May. Because I don't want to haul a whole bunch of protein and hay to my cows in February and March when it's 20 degrees below zero, cold and frickin' windy and miserable to be outside. Like, you don't have to worry about your calves freezing to death in February if you leave them in the calf warmer.
Yeah, I'm joking with Chan Gates one day. He said, well, aren't you worried about calving in May and June? I'm like, only a sunburn. There's not. I mean, there's differences.
Another good one I like is, you can't calve while you're moving every day. Like, really?
I used to have a video. I had a cow have a calf, and I think she was a 3-year-old, so it would have been a second calf. When I move, I just park the pickup, unload the 4-wheeler, drive through the cows, move the fence, and come back. And that's a low pressure move. All I do is move the fence in front of them, put a new fence in front of them. They can move and then go back. Or if they come through a gate, I leave the gate open. But that, in the hour I was gone, that cow had that calf up, cleaned off, full belly, and she was already moving, a 1-hour old calf. I'm like, they learn what they're doing.
I've seen it.
And I put no pressure on it. That's why she did it.
I've seen a cow. I had one of my cows last year move a 5-minute-old calf. Like,
yeah,
I went out and I started gathering, and I had my herd kind of gathered, and I'd just started the push, and I could tell she was spraying real hard. She started getting real agitated. She wanted to peel off the herd. I let her go. She went just like 30 yards away, had a calf, fine. I sent the herd up over the hill. They kept on going to the water tank. I turned around, came back and watched her, sat back. Like, just made a circle around here. It's about 50 yards away. She looked at me, understood I wasn't going to come mess with her. She did her thing, got the calf cleaned up, got him cleaned off, and up and walking. 5 minutes later, she was up over the hill with the herd.
She must have had some horns.
Yes. Yeah, she had about 4 foot on either side. She was pretty impressive.
Yeah, they are resilient if we let them be. I try to let them be cows, right? And I need to control where they're at times. Right now, I'm on a grazing vacation. They're in a big area, calving, clipping off, because we talked earlier, warm season grass is piddly.
Yeah.
So I'm not where I want to be at yet to turn out. So we're on an area that we check, like our calving cows, we check every other day or every third day. Heifers, we check twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, and then like Saturday night. I still get the fun of 9:30 at night, Dad, me, and my brother, we pulled a dead calf out of a heifer in a plum bush in the dark because I had seen her just, right at dark.
Right.
But I checked her. That was the third time I was in there that day. So you go 3 times, bad things happen.
Yeah.
But at least we saved the heifer. So it's still, I wasn't freezing when I did it.
You gonna sell that heifer?
Probably going to eat her.
Okay.
She's a 2-year-old and she's shaped right. Probably about 1st of August, she'll be body condition 6 and be good grass finished beef.
Go to freezer camp.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Right on. Right on.
It's dry, so everybody's on the chopping block, and I got an empty freezer.
Everybody's a candidate this year. What else, man?
I think that's it for today.
All right. I guess we'll wrap up then.
It's good.
Thanks for coming over, man. It's
Yeah.
great to see you.
I need to come over sometime and ride around with you to ranch sometime when I get time.
Anytime you
But I
need
wanted to wait till it was like grass is growing and
till it's worth looking at. I get that. And if
it's always worth looking at. It's just nice to see green grass smells different than brown grass.
it's nice not to be clouded up with dust. Whenever you need a break from your feral farm children, you're always welcome to come over.
Macy will want to come.
You can bring her
with
too.
with the little one and leave the other 2 somewhere.
We'll work it out. We'll
Yeah.
figure it out. All right. Good stuff. See you next week, guys.
You got it where it snaps off yet?
No, that's just for me to
Cut it there.